Welcome to the Learning Can't Wait podcast, an iTutor production. At iTutor, our vision is to ensure every child has access to education, regardless of circumstance. Each episode, we will be joined by pathfinders within and around the education space, who are bringing about transformational change on behalf of deserving students. I am your host, Hayley Spira-Bauer. Welcome back, everybody, to today's recording. We have Joe Patuleia. Joe, did I say that right?
Yes, you did.
I did. We did some practice the last time we talked. We have Joe Patuleia, a very good friend of iTutors and an incredible former school leader. And I'm going to let you tell a little bit about yourself, all the things you've done in and around education, but welcome, welcome, welcome. So glad you're here.
Well, thank you. I'm really pleased to talk with you because you're so enthusiastic. It kind of gets me even more enthusiastic, although I've never been short on that area. Well, thanks. The origin is kind of, I think, unique. And sometimes I wonder how in the world I wound up where I am.
I think our listeners are excited to hear that story of how you wound up exactly where you are. So why don't you start with that? Where are you now? What are you doing in the world? What was your most recent involvement in education-related activity? And then where did you start?
Well, my most recent, prior to iTutor, was to help a nonprofit that's called Boys Hope, Girls Hope. And it's an affiliate in New York. There's 14 others across the country. And it was a great end of my, so I thought, professional career. And it kind of answered a lot of the questions for me. As a high school principal and as a Boys and Girls Club executive director, there were kids that I knew we could help and we helped them, but there were kids I knew we could only help if we took them out of their environment and put them, and that was always a question, where were you going to put them, right? So Boys Hope, Girls Hope answered that question. We would recruit kids in the 8th grade who had the ability to go to college, had the desire to go to college, had the skills to go to college, but lived below the poverty line and for one reason or another was in a living situation that was at best non-supportive. And these were inner city kids. So you can imagine the range of what that meant. And so they came to live. This was in the city residential program. We paid their tuition to go to a private school next door, and they lived with us, and we had total control of their life. Not exactly, but they would go to school, and when they got out of school, they'd walk right back to us. The commute was tough. It's like 50, not even 50 yards. But then we would engage them immediately with academic support, tutors, and really help them to make sure they got what they got in school and that they got their homework the way it should be done. Flowing with that was a program that we put together. I kind of resurrected the program that was there, and I hired this fantastic woman who just turned it upside down. And so right from freshman year, these kids are preparing to figure out what they want to do, what college they want to go to, what do they want to study, where do they want to live, what is their game plan. And so that by the time they became seniors, they were really applying to colleges that were realistic in terms of what they wanted. 100% of our kids got into college, actually more than that college. 87% got full, tuition paid for. And the best part of the program, or one of the best parts, is this was not a 4-year program. We then helped them for the next 4 years in college. This was an 8-year program. We wanted to guarantee that in 8 years, they would walk out of college with a degree into a nice white-collar job, professional, and all of that. So on top of the academic and the college prep, then we worked on values and community service. And how do you live by yourself? They had chores in the dorm. They had to turn in their electronic equipment at 10 p.m. The lights went out at 10:30 p.m.
I feel like that phone addiction in and of itself, or device addiction in and of itself, is a huge distractor to child and adult success. But it sounds like there were a lot of components that Boys Hope, Girls Hope considered as it tried to craft a program that would be supportive and provide opportunities for the students to really thrive?
Right. It's a well-designed. It's across the country. The leadership across the country is terrific. The support they give is incredible to each of the affiliates. And I was very fortunate to have a board that was terrific and a staff that was terrific. So it was a great opportunity. And I think I helped them get to their next level. And I look forward to seeing them grow. So that was my last.
That was your last stint. And then, let's do a little bit of an origin story. So how did you find your way into education in the first place? And why did you stay in education, Joe?
Well, I grew up with my grandparents who were from Portugal. And needless to say, I was there. My grandfather didn't have hands. He had an accident, so he had no hands. And I was his hands at 6 years old, 5 years old. So life was tough. Let's put it that way. And along the way, first grade, second grade, third grade, I was an okay student. I think my aunt, she gave me a little tough love where she would not allow me to watch Superman or Zorro on TV unless I had my multiplication tables done. She had been a top student when she graduated from high school, and she was determined to make me the same. And I was resisting a lot, but I would do anything to watch Superman and Zorro. So I was not about to not do my math table.
That was your carrot for the carrot and stick.
Oh, what a carrot, man. So then my life turned around into sixth grade. We had a student teacher, my first male teacher, and I had some really good female teachers before that, but I had some, whether male or female didn't make a difference. I had some teachers that were not, they didn't understand kids. And I was in a tough school. We had 30 kids in the classroom, and it was not pretty. It was not pretty. Anyway, we had a student teacher come in, and I answered a question in class, and everybody laughed. And he stopped the laughing, stopped the students, and said, "Hey, stop. We never laugh at any student's answer, ever. And by the way, Joseph is correct." That was it. Edward DiGiacomo, that was it. And I'd do anything for that guy. I decided right then and there in October of whatever year that was, I'm going to be a teacher. I'm going to be like
What a powerful story. I mean, that teacher had the ability to intervene at what we now call bullying. Maybe it wasn't called that then, but had the ability to intervene and change the trajectory of your life. So after that moment, Tell us about the big transformation and change and kind of your attention and desire to learn.
Yeah, well, it was followed by a tough seventh grade teacher who challenged everybody in the class to get on the honor roll, and he would buy everybody a frap down at Curtis Drugs. And again, it was a tough school, tough kids, and I don't know, he motivated me. I was already on fire with Mr. DiGiacomo, and this guy became a mentor for me. He came in and out of my life for many years. I think we were his first class teaching, but so I excelled. I was on the honor roll every quarter. I mean, it's the first time I've been in the honor roll in my life. Every quarter, eighth grade continued, and then in high school got turned on to all kinds of things. I was going to a youth group, which really was supportive. But, my French teacher became a lifelong friend, and then I was going on to college, and I knew where I wanted to go. I knew 3 colleges, and I had a part-time job senior year at Firestone Tire Company. I came back, my hands were greasy, had my work clothes on, and I was walking through the mail room, and there was a little door to a room where they were doing college interviews, and a gentleman was standing there by the name of Leon LaRue. He saw me walk by. He said, "Hey, are you a senior?" I said, "Yes. What do you teach? I mean, what's your major?" He says, "Mathematics," because of my aunt, right? I get on my multiplication tables. And he said, "Well, we're dying for a math teacher." "Well, what community are you?" "Bedford." I never heard of Bedford, ever. And he interviewed me and practically hired me on the spot. And of all the places I could have gone, of all the places I applied, Bedford was perfect for me. Everything about it was perfect. It was a great school system with great processes, great procedures, great things in place, great curriculums. And I had, in those days, I was one of the last teachers hired before this big, like a hiring freeze for years because of Prop 13 or Prop 2.5. I mean, there was some real societal and governmental issues with education. And so everybody there was 8 years older than I was. I was, easily the youngest teacher there. But I learned. They all became my mentors. So I taught math. I got involved in school up to my eyeballs. I coached 3 major sports. I was a class advisor, student legislative court, and I drove my principal crazy because I'd always be asking, "What else do you want me to do?"
They couldn't fill your roster enough.
Oh my God! So then early on I got a degree from Salem State University in counseling because I wanted to. Because kids were coming to me and I wanted to be, I wanted to know what I was helping them, But then I realized, wow, guidance counselors, they don't guide you. What they do is they change your schedule, they answer parent complaints, and they help the top kids get into college. I mean, I don't want to be too cynical, but
no, they're burdened with a lot of responsibilities that take away from what they're trained and capable of doing, which is really supporting students' social and emotional needs. I think
the amount of time they spend talking with a student about what's going on in their life consistently, it really is almost impossible. So then I had a 1 year, I was awarded a 1 year sabbatical. I went to Harvard Graduate School of Education. And the next chapter in my life occurred because I met 2 rabble rousers, one Don Oliver from Concord and the other one, Harold Howe III, who was a former Secretary of Education, and both of them, I was older than most of the grad students, and we just had a great experience. And when I came back, I knew I had outgrown the classroom. I wanted to take what I did in the classroom and make the school better. And I realized that Bedford was not going to be that place, So I swallowed hard and left a home for 17 years where you went to weddings, you went to children's baptism, you did everything, And so it was a tough decision to make. I did it, and then the path went, and I became an assistant principal for a couple of years, then a principal at a few schools. But I realized that my MO became take everything I learned at Bedford and make the school I was going to better. And look at the inner city schools, because that's what the challenge was from Don Oliver. He said, anybody can teach in a suburban school. Don't kid yourself. Go test your mettle. Go to where it's tough. Go to the inner city schools. And that's where I went. And it was tough. Besides confiscating drugs and knives and breaking up fights, you had to get the kids focused on learning. Got to get the teachers to buy in, teachers who have become cynical, and in some case, racist. So it was a wow. As my last high school principalship came to a close back at my original high school, which was, that's an own story. I got an opportunity now to carry that idea a step further and go to New York City. All my Boston friends were going, let me get this right. You're going to New York City?
You're cheering for the Yankees. You switched teams.
Home of the Yankees.
Yeah.
And I said, listen, I'm bringing my Red Sox, Patriots, Celtics, Bruins, hats with me. I went there and got a chance to help an organization that was not doing well and rebuild them, their education program. And it culminated fantastically in raising $90 million and building a brand new clubhouse in the last worst place in Harlem. So it was great. And then I went to Boys Hope, Girls Hope. So my whole life has been about helping kids, making sure no one's being bullied. I had those school rules, and I had my own rules for kids. And they knew where everybody stood. They knew consequences. That's what I always felt was the consequences. And I worked really hard with kids to separate the kid from the action. Because the kid, I I guess I practiced what I learned in my teens and 20s was, tough love versus unconditional love, and how both of them really can live together. And so the unconditional love was, hey, look, I love you for nothing. You're a human being. You're alive. You're breathing. You are worthy. You're worthy. So affirmations, confirmations, you didn't have to earn that. It was a gift. We gave it to you free. But tough love was, I can only do this in the framework of my value system. So I love you, but if you bring a knife to school, that is outside my value system, and I have to expel you. But now, did I throw them out the door? No. I created alternative schools where they could find their way, gave them a path back to the mainstream.
So let's talk about that for a second, Joe. So let's talk about this idea of love is a gift. You get it for free just for existing. And tough love is the boundaries you hold. So, a lot of schools have really stringent policies regarding things that involve safety of students. And I'm wondering how you created what you call your values and how that expectation and those expectations were communicated to students, right? Because it's one thing for the school leader top down to have an idea in their head, but the best schools have buy-in from community members, stakeholders, everybody involved to really allow for the success of the students that are being served.
Well, I think I took my experience in my youth group, and I counseled for 10 years after high school at a summer camp for a week that continued that relationship. I coached. I was with kids all the time. So I was always in a position of adult monitoring / influence, all of this. So it happened in a generic, holistic way. But when I found myself in a position of school leadership, now I had the opportunity to take my style in the classroom and my style with a team and have it go across the board into a school. Now, it wasn't easy. Some teachers were resistant, and on the political level, some school committee people had issues because I didn't do a favor for them. I didn't help their neighbor or move their kid or something like that. I kind of went by the book, but I would start off every school year the same way. Be me, the student body, and I'd be very explicit. I'd say, here is the student handbook. I've carefully written this with a lot of help from teachers. You have two choices. You can read this book and memorize it. It's 100 pages. Read the book and memorize it, or you can listen to me for the next 10 minutes. And in the next 10 minutes, I said, here are 5 ways you can get thrown out of this school. 5 ways. Bring a gun, a knife, any kind of a weapon, assault a teacher. I went down, I went down the lines. And by the way, the last one was, if you harass or bully any student in this school. And I said, here are the consequences. And I made very clear, I love all of you. You're all good kids, but good kids make bad choices sometimes. You get influenced by your peers. And I'm sorry, that's a decision you make. You have the next 4 years to do some pretty stupid things. And most of the time, you're not going to go to jail for it. Our job is to help you not do those stupid things. Because when you leave us, when you're 18 and you go into the real world and you do stupid things, you're going to face the law. You're going to face policemen. You're going to face, hopefully, not jail. But, so you got 4 years to screw up and have us help you. And our job is to help you not screw up too much. We're going to be the boundaries. Your job will be to push because that's what teenagers do. I get that. But know this. The line is here. We will not break. I may bend a little bit, but not break. And so this is how we do it. This is the rules. And then after that, it's consistency. The teachers don't even, is he really going to do that? because they had other principals that didn't do that. They say one thing, do something else, they had pets. But I was involved with the kids. I was at the events. That was my MO.
That was actually going to be the second part of what I say, right? Because schools all have boundaries. They think about how they're going to keep kids support. They're going to set the boundaries for the students so they know the expectations, which you clearly communicated to them at the beginning of the year. But then it doesn't matter if you have the rules, if you're not doing the things to fill the student's social emotional cup. So start telling me about that, not just for you, but for your staff as well. Like, how did you build a community and a culture that was supportive of the challenges the students faced?
Well, it's interesting. In the last high school I was at, which was the one I graduated from, an average 4-year career, you have 7 teachers a year. So in 4 years, you get 28 teachers. Okay. So I had 28 teachers when I was in high school. And when I came back as a new principal, I looked up the faculty roster and there were 6 teachers left out of my 28 who, had I looked at my whole 28 before I went there, I said, who are the best 6 teachers? It was the same ones. I mean, that is not a coincidence. And so I relied on them. Of course, they had a tough time calling me, what do they called me? Okay, boss. But they were laughing because now I was their boss. They go, it's time for us to retire when one of our students is now the principal. But I relied on them. I empowered the leaders of the school, the faculty leaders, to help me hire great teachers who were not political, had only one interest, and that to help kids. So it's really about building the culture that got the community involved. We did so many community things. We involved the kids, we involved the parents. Peabody High became really, really something. But it was, being consistent, not playing favorites, having some empathy, and just making sure that kids knew that, they weren't being thrown to the wolves. I mean, I can think of time after time after time that we had situations. We had one student, there's an awful situation where he wound up selling drugs from the bathroom, and then he assaulted a teacher that tried to intervene. There's a question whether he assaulted him or just tried to push him away from the bathroom toilet where he was flushing down the drugs. But anyway, he not only got expelled, but the district attorney wanted to make an example of him and sent him to jail. So his mom had come in, and she was obviously a distraught single mom trying to figure out how, I said, look, he made a bad decision. I know he's not a bad kid, but we got to help him. So I helped him get his high school diploma while he was in jail. And he went to actually school after he got out. And every once in a while, I get a note from this guy who's now in his, 40s, 50s. So that's, the reward of education, where you can help, and it's not just me. I mean, I had great assistant principals. You just got to create the staff. And when you have the boo birds on your faculty, you have to, as a friend once told me, you creatively neglect them. They do their job, and that's fine. But, and of course, I never give up on anybody. But, you just have to do what's right. You have to stay forward, going ahead. And sometimes, you cause issues for superintendents because you make a decision that is awkward for them because they get a parental phone call from someone that's influential. And I'll give you an example, a basketball job open. All right. And so my superintendent, who was my big champion, he called me and he said, look, the guy in the school committee, he's really done a lot of support for us. He has a candidate that he wants you to look at. I said, sure, I'll look at anybody. I interviewed the guy. He wasn't the guy for the job, a good candidate, but wasn't the guy for I hired somebody else. So my superintendent called me and said, Joe, well, what did you do? You didn't hire the guy. I said, no, I didn't. I found a better candidate. But Joe, this guy, the school committee person, really, he's been on our corner. I said, look, Lou, my job was always to hire the best person for the job. The guy was good, but he wasn't the best person for the job. And so, You have to spend a little political capital, which I did at that moment, to a guy who had my back all the time. But you had to do what was right. And so that was also part of my MO, that's how I went. So I don't know if that answers your question.
I think that's, school leaders that are listening and folks that are in and around education are probably recognizing some parallels to their own experiences. I'm wondering, let's shift gears for a second and think about school leaders today. What do you think is the most important thing school leaders today need to be focusing on to help their community, their school communities in this, stage of the pandemic?
There's so many issues that get underlined, put in bold, and put quotation marks around it. Not because of the pandemic, but they've become more pronounced because of the pandemic. And in some cases, they've gone amok. Principals are under great pressure all of the time. All of the time. They say it's lonely at the top. You have no idea. And your superintendent better be in your back, covering your back, being supportive of you, because you're going to make some decisions that, are not the most popular, period. And the superintendent is the one that needs to back you up, but not, but also kind of support your decision and why it was made, as opposed to, no, we'll get so-and-so to, he'll owe us one. No, I'm not going to owe you one. Now, I believe in compromise. I mean, I learned a long time ago when I first became an administrator that, I always thought, okay, I've watched this assistant principal for years, so I know that this is what he does. Then I get into the job and I realize, whoa, his job was really like this. Then as an assistant principal, I go, I kind of know what a principal does. And I thought the principal did this, and I realized he does all of this. So I learned a lot every time I moved up, and I learned that black and white, a lot of teachers see things as black or white. But as you get further along in education, you realize the amount of gray grows a lot. You can't bend your values, but you have to find a way that compromises without, not being able to live with yourself in making a decision. You have to be able to live with yourself and stick to that. But principals are facing situations where the school now is everything for them. Most schools have a health clinic now in there. Why do they have a health clinic? Why aren't parents taking their kids to the doctors like they used to do? No, the school has become mom and pop with health clinics, and of course, school committees are hearing, oh no, they're giving out condoms, they're supporting this and that, and it just becomes a political mess when all you're trying to do is give kids access to healthcare. That's all you're trying to do. So you have that issue. You have SAT and prep issue. Where you're going to school. I mean, it's you're doing everything as a teacher. You're doing everything. You're the disciplinarian. We used to laugh. A lot of teachers would say that the first time their kid ever heard the word no was when they said it, meaning obviously their parents didn't say no. But parents are under siege. We always say that, when you're a parent, you're a king, you're a queen in your son or daughter's eyes until they hit about 13 or 14. Then you become incredibly stupid for the next 4 years because peers become more important. Your peers' opinions and values become more important than yours, which is hard to believe, but it is the fact. So how do you keep your relationship with your own son and daughter, positive and straight, and then everybody else's? What are we supposed to be doing? Teaching math, right? For 40 minutes of teaching math. There were sometimes issues in class that popped up, social issues in class that popped up. And my department head that I had that supervised me would roll over now in her grave. But I wouldn't teach math that class. We would talk about that issue. We would talk about the issue, because that was more important than trying to prove Pythagorean's theorem in class that day. So you had to, and I'm not saying that was the right way to do things, but that's what I did. That's what worked for me. And the same way in education, I would sometimes take teachers that I thought were unhappy, And I would ask them this question, like, why are you here? Why are you here? Because in the union would get, you can't say that. I said, yeah, I can. I'm asking a question because he's miserable. He's miserable here. And he only has like one life to live. Like, retire, go do something else. Enjoy your life because you don't enjoy it here. And guess what? If you don't enjoy it, the kids are miserable and they have fun making you more miserable. So these are all the other things that go on. And it's the challenge, MCAS exams and, the pressure of, I love, I don't know if you know about MCAS exams, but one of the first, 1993, the Ed Reform Act occurred. And one of my good friends who was my student, he was my supervisor when I student taught. He became actually the commissioner of education. And he was one of the instrumental people in development of that. But you started getting grades. Schools started getting grades. What they're trying to do is help the inner city schools, but they had to do them all at the same time. So schools that didn't really need any help, like a lot of the suburban wealthy schools, they were rocketing to the top. So there was Harvard, Massachusetts was the school system, very small school system. They were number one in the state 3 years in a row on their MCAS scores, Massachusetts comprehensive assessment system. And so he got on the radio and they said, tell us your secret, Mr. Superintendent. How is it you have been, number one in the state 3 years in a row? He said, well, I'd love to tell you it's my leadership, but it's not. I'd love to tell you it's my staff. They're great, but it's really not them. I'd like to tell you it's the curriculum we developed. It's not really them. So the reporter said, well, okay, what's the secret? What is it? The kids walk into kindergarten and they can read and they can write and they're computer literate. That job is easy after that. Kids in inner cities, they're worried about being hungry. I'm serious. They're worried about being hungry. They're worried about maybe where they're going to sleep that night. They're worried about who's sleeping at their house that night. And that's just the inside. What about the danger of the neighborhood? I mean, there's some pretty tough stories from Boys and Girls Clubs and Boys Hope Girls. So, I mean, it's crazy what's out there. And so as an educator, and I think I don't care if you're the superintendent, the principal, or the teacher, you have to have empathy, not sympathy, empathy for the kid. Like we say, don't give a handout, give a hand up, right? Believe in them, believe in their ability to be a success, to be something, to be, someone they can be proud of. You can't give them esteem, right? You can't give them self-esteem. They will get self-esteem when they do something that they know was hard and they did it. So you have to support them. A little tough love. Don't wash away things that they did, and teach them. Every time they break a rule, honestly, is like a teaching moment, if you look at it that way. And it's no different than being a coach. It's no different than being in a classroom teaching equations and they take a wrong step. Teaching moment. Doesn't mean they were stupid. In fact, some of the best lessons I had was when I would write a question on the board and I'd pick on a kid who I knew was struggling and, okay, let's solve this problem, Jimmy. And Jimmy's answer immediately would be, I couldn't get that one. I don't know what to do. Okay, well, let's see, what do you know? And it's kind of Socratic method. We'd start with what he knew and we'd take him down that path until he came up with the answer, which he was trying to do without building upon all the things that he already learned. Well, isn't that like life, right? Isn't that life? If you come into something that you don't know what to do, you start relying on what are the lessons you learned in life, or what are the things you do know, or what are the people you know that could possibly help you get to this. That's what education is supposed to be.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's supposed to be this hands-on collaborative effort, learning from people, learning from experiences, learning from just discovery in and of itself. When I think back to school and I think about the best lesson I ever had, and the funny story is the one who taught this lesson I saw recently when I was walking through my old high school. And I had this moment of I was completely starstruck. The lesson was a simple lesson, but she made it come to life. And it was a simple concept, but learning was hands-on, learning was discovery, learning was asking questions. There was, just space for exploration. And making sure that kids have, if I grow nothing else in my own children and the students I've taught in the past, I hope I grow curiosity. Empathy too. Empathy is like number one in my home, but curiosity and the desire to want to learn or know more or discover more is so valuable and pays dividends for a child's future.
Kids do not remember, most of the time, they don't remember the grade they got in a class with a teacher they really liked, but they always remember how that teacher made them feel. Always remember the confidence they had with that teacher. And if they had a teacher that was not so empathetic, you stop any kid in the classroom, hey, what did you get in your last test? If the kid failed, he's going to say, the teacher's terrible. They don't accept that they failed. It's the teacher was terrible. And that meant what? The teacher didn't help him, wasn't empathetic, mean, didn't, whatever it was. That's how a kid hides, kids today, when I learned, it is much cooler for a kid to disrupt the class and get thrown out than it is to say, I don't know the answer to that question. I don't know how to do it. That's not cool. You come across stupid. But if you swear at the teacher, he says, get out of the class, then what happens, right? Then you walk out, it's just teachers don't get taught how to work with kids. They get taught how to do a lesson plan, how to come up with examples, how to do grades, how to make tests, correct tests. They don't.
I want to be more optimistic and say that there are some programs, and I kind of am now going into a deep dive and research this, where they're really actively integrating social and emotional learning and how to support kids through trauma into the curriculum. I'm certain of the fact, and I don't want to name anyone off the top of my head because I don't want to be incorrect here, but I think that there is an understanding that investment in social emotional learning and having trauma-informed educators is powerful in every type of community, right? I want to be the challenging host here and push back on the notion that it only happens in inner cities and it only happens, it happens everywhere. Children face trauma all over the world in every type of community for all types of reasons. And so having educators, I think you make a really valid point that educators need to know not just their content, not just be a subject matter expert, but they need to understand brain science and they need to understand how to help the children whose behaviors are most profound, which usually refer back to some sort of internal chemistry mishap or trauma that has been experienced. So I want to be optimistic in that, Joe. I think that education is shifting to a better understanding of how kids tick and what teachers need to do to help them.
I agree with you 100%. I sometimes focus on, the problems that need to be solved, but there was a time where student teaching was, I think, 20 weeks. 10 weeks one place, 10 weeks another place. And somehow that seemed to disappear where student teaching became 8 weeks. And the supervising teachers didn't do that part. They didn't work with you about, okay, this is how you teach, not what you teach, it's how you teach. And so there's more of that coming. The socially, that's what really put me over the edge. I put you over the good edge with iTutor, because you take teachers and you work with them about how to get on the same page with kids before they actually get into the lesson. Because virtual teaching now, a lot of people say, oh, there's nothing like in-person teaching. I don't know. I think if you have a teacher online that takes the time to get on, the same page with kids on their social, emotional, where they are, that is actually can be better than when you're in front of a class of 30 kids, because you're not reaching every single kid. That was part of that's what I brought in with my youth group training, with my guidance counselor degree, was having that empathetic thing and teaching that to my staff. We had a lot of professional development. It was never about how to teach better. It was always about how to help kids, with all the things that go on in their lives. And you're right, inner city has their own set of problems. Suburban has their set of problems, but all kids have, identity problems. All kids, we know that. I mean, we're on the same page with that. I think about how kids are lonely, a lot of them, even if they have a lot of friends. And you hear so many kids. I mean, teenage suicide is off the charts. Gun violence is unprecedented. And how is this happening? And people can't point to one thing like, oh, bad family. Oh, alcoholic dad. Oh, very affluent parents who are never around. I can share with you great parents, in a great situation. And the kid made some horrible decisions. So all we can do is the best we can. The best we can is help the kid understand that you care about them as a person, as a human being, and let them know that unfortunately does not include when they do something, that is out of bounds. You still love them? Just like, you have two children. I have 3 children. I love them for nothing. For nothing. There's nothing they can do. I say this not as much as I used to, but I still say it to them. There's nothing you can do that will make me love you more. Nothing. I'm loving you as much as I have. You have it all. It's a gift. There's also nothing that you can do that can make me love you less. I still love you. If you do something that's really horrific out there, I'll be sad, and you'll have to obviously, live with the consequence of that behavior. But I unless you dramatically change who you are, which drugs can do and other things, I'm still going to love you. But it doesn't mean you can do anything you want. In fact, my no means that I love you. It means that this is always the boundary. You can come up to here, and my answer is always going to be the same. No, you can't do that. So
Joe, we're getting near the end of our time together, and I want to ask you the question I ask every one of my guests, which is, what advice would you give an educator starting their career this year in 2022?
Well, I actually don't care what year it is. I think when the noise, as the Patriots like to say, when the noise is out there, you don't pay attention to it. And when you're a classroom teacher, when you're educated, the noise means administrative baloney, parental issues, school committee, crises. You go in your room, close the door, and do what you came into education to do. Teach the kids. Teach the kids. And that was, my friend of mine gave me that advice when I was a new teacher. He said, look, don't pay attention to that. Just go in there, close the door, and teach. And so that helped me get through those things. But in the times that, the door had to be opened, I just was always, standing up for what I thought was right. Don't be afraid to not stand up for what, you believe right. And maybe you might be in the minority, I mean, I don't know. Maybe you've had this experience, but sometimes I would say that at a faculty meeting or something as a teacher, and other teachers would then come up to me afterwards. Oh, I'm so glad that you said that. I felt, I wouldn't feel flat. I felt like, well, why didn't you put your hand up? Well, why didn't you do it? Oh, they get back at you. The administration, they'll give you cafeteria duty next year. I'm saying, I like cafeteria duty, so I don't care. So that's all I'd say. Be hungry to learn. Never stop learning. I'm still learning today. Close the door. Don't be teach. Don't be afraid to stand what's right. And I'm going to leave you with this quote. This quote I've had wherever I've taught, wherever I've been, and it's with me today. It's from Cervantes. It's in the book Don Quixote, the man from La Mancha. His quote, which has really meant so much to me, says, "Too much sanity may be madness, but maddest of all is to see life as it is and not as it should be." And I've spent my whole life, I know how life is. I grew up knowing how life is. And I spent my whole life looking and moving towards how life should be. That's it. That's all I got today.
Joe, that's a great way to end our time together today. I want to say thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for joining our podcast recording and sharing your story with our listeners. It has been a pleasure talking to you today.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
And thanks for everybody listening today. Bye. Thanks for listening to the Learning Can't Wait podcast. If you liked what you heard, please rate, review, and share this episode. Be the first to know when we have a new episode by subscribing wherever you listen to podcasts. If you'd like to be a guest on the show or have a suggestion for an episode, email us at podcast@itutor.com.